seconds after his police radio crackles into life, Inspector James Beattie kicks the squad car into gear, triggers its siren and roars the wrong way down the B0. Beattie and his partner, Constable Jill Simpson, are wearing stab-proof vests and carrying batons, canisters of mace and handcuffs. But like the vast majority of London copes, neither of them has a gun. "I've never, ever felt the need to have a firearm," Beattie said while on patrol last week. "Our prime tool for defusing any situation or conflict is always talking to someone. If I deal with any confrontation, I'm not reaching for my belt. I'm talking to them to see if I can disengage the situation." Arriving at their destination, they discovered reports of a disturbance at a medical center where nothing more than an irate patient. But even during their most challenging call-outs, their relaxed attitude about being unarmed is the norm for London copes. While America's police have become increasingly militarized, the British tradition of unarmed bobbies on the beat has endured. Despite top officials warning that a terrorist attack in the UK is highly likely, more than 90% of the Metropolitan Police officers tasked with protecting the city's 8.5 million residents do not carry guns. "The British policing wave is that we're part of the public," the force's Commissioner Sir Bernard Hogan Howe told NBC News. "The firearm puts a barrier between people and the police." The recent string of attacks, in cities including Paris, Brussels, Nice and Istanbul, has forced authorities across Europe to reassess their approaches to tackling terrorism. But while police forces on the continent and in the US routinely arm their officers, London's so-called Met has largely avoided that. Even with a recently announced boost in officers carrying guns on the UK capital's streets by the end of this year, from 2,200 to 2,800, they will make up just 8.8% of the force. According to Brian Dillon, former head of the Met's Firearms Command who now runs the counter-terrorism consultancy Rubicon Resilience, the force's unique policing model can't be found anywhere else in the world. The statistics surrounding police shootings in the UK are startling when compared to the US. Officers in England and Wales fired just 7 bullets between March 2015 and this March. Not including accidental shots, shooting out tires, or putting down dangerous or injured animals. During that period, just 5 people were shot dead by police in England and Wales, according to British charity Inquest, which helps families after police-related deaths. Police Scotland, tasked with guarding 5.3 million people in an area the size of Maine, reports only 1 officer involved shooting since the National Force was created in 2013. In London, the Metropolitan Police has fatally shot just 10 people in the past 10 years. U.S. law enforcement officials have this year killed 693 people and counting, according to figures compiled by The Guardian. Simpson, the police constable, said that in her decade and a half with the Met she has never had a gun pointed at her and never seen shots fired during active duty. "I've used my mace spray twice and I think I've used my baton twice in 15 years, she said. The unblame effect. This chasm between the US and UK comes with the caveat that American copes are far more likely to encounter armed criminals. Around 1/3 of Americans own a firearm or live with someone who does, and there are more than 30,000 gun-related deaths in the US every year, according to gunpolicy.org, a project run by Australia's University of Sydney. By contrast, just 144 people were killed by guns in Britain in 2013, the latest year the site holds records for Britain. That's not to say British police don't put themselves in harm's way. Simpson recounts once being stuck over the head with her own handcuffs and pulled to the ground by her hair while attempting to arrest a man who had beaten his girlfriend. The constable said she chased the suspect and was only able to detain him after spraying him with mace. "Did she ever feel like she needed a gun? Not really. When he pulled me to the ground, obviously there is fear there," said Simpson, 48. "But for me the mace worked and did what it was supposed to do." Gun laws in the UK are among the toughest in the world. Brits who apply for a license are subject to extensive background checks, and police can interview their friends, family and even their doctors when assessing their applications. Handguns and assault rifles, or any weapon capable of automatic fire, are banned outright. The stringent controls were imposed after Scotland's Dunblane massacre of March 1996. When former Scout leader Thomas Hamilton entered the school and fatally shot 16 children and a teacher. The killings, carried out with 4 handguns that were legal at the time, shocked politicians into action in a way America's mass shootings have not. The UK has another advantage in that it's a relatively small island, not even the size of Michigan, with no land borders. That makes it difficult to smuggle illegal guns into the country. Most of the recent high-profile attacks in London have involved assailants using bladed weapons. In May 2013, de-radicalized Muslim converts armed with knives and a meat cleaver hacked a British soldier to death on a South London street. In December 2015, a man with a history of mental illness cut a stranger's throat at a London subway station. And earlier this month, a Norwegian national allegedly killed 64-year-old American Darlene Horton during a knife rampage in busy Russell Square. In the latter 2 incidents, no shots were fired. Police instead chose to use stun guns to subdue the suspects. The last large-scale attack in London came on July 7, 2005, when 4 coordinated suicide bombers killed 52 people and injured more than 700 others on the city's transport network. While the British capital has so far been spared the ISIS-linked violence that traumatized Paris and Brussels, many Londoners fear they may be next. The U.K.'s national threat level has been considered severe since 2014. The government says an attack is highly likely, and Commissioner Hogan Howe admitted last month it is a case of when, not if London is hit. British intelligence services worry about the 800 or so Brits who travelled to join ISIS or other extremist groups in Iraq and Syria. Around half of these so-called foreign fighters have returned to Britain, and officials say some of them pose a security threat. This year's boost to the number of armed police on London's streets is an attempt to counter this perceived danger. More copes wielding long rifles are being posted to potential targets such as busy tourist attractions. "We're not trying to militarize London," one counter-terrorism officer told NBC News, speaking on condition of anonymity due to the sensitive nature of his work. "What we are trying to say is there is an effective and fast response to any criminal or terrorism attack. Metropolitan police officers are only given guns if they volunteer, and even then they still have to go through quite a rigorous selection process," according to Chief Superintendent Martin Hemby. Living in a war zone, this approach is not without its critics. Calls to arm Britain's police peaked in 2012 when 2 unarmed officers, Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone, were killed in a gun and grenade attack in Manchester. The romantic image of the unarmed police service should be consigned to the history books, according to Norman Brennan, who served for 31 years with the British Transport Police and now campaigns to arm his former colleagues. "We are now living in a war zone where terrorists have infiltrated Europe. The least we can do to give our police the tools they need." Brennan claimed officers without guns are sitting ducks when facing armed criminals and terrorists. Despite the increase in London, the number of armed officers across England and Wales has actually plummeted by 1,267 since 2009 to just 5,639 this year. Some are reluctant to volunteer for firearms duties because they fear they will be hung out to dry if they have to use their weapons, according to the Police Federation, which represents officers. Many point to Anthony Long, an ex-Met officer only cleared in 2015 after fatally shooting a suspected armed robber a decade earlier. Long told the BBC this month that the U.K.'s police watchdog seems to be treating officers as criminals. The poll by the Federation this year said that 40% of officers fear being attacked at work, but just half that number were willing to be armed. "By time people start hitting you, it's too late to defend yourself." Members of the public are evenly split on the issue, according to figures published earlier this month by pollster BMG Research. Only 26% believe police are prepared for a terrorist attack. But just 42% were in favor of arming all officers, down from 48% in December. British officials point out that police with guns haven't prevented terrorists from striking other countries. In most of the recent incidents across the US and Europe, bodies were already on the ground when officers arrived. "We saw the terrible attack of Charlie Hebdo, where an officer arrived with a handgun and was outgunned, and therefore hadn't got a reasonable response," said Hogan Howe, referring to the Paris shooting in which 2 Al-Qaeda gunmen killed 11 people, including a Muslim cop. The Met says it's well equipped to stop attackers getting past the planning stage because of what it describes as a world-class intelligence setup. But this approach has also attracted controversy. Its prevent strategy, with an annual budget of around $52 million, focuses on gathering information about potential plotters. Our strategy has always been that good intelligence allows you to prevent the attack in the first place, Hogan Howe told a press conference last month. By time people start hitting you, it's too late to defend yourself. The Met says its close relationship with Britain's domestic and foreign intelligence services helped foil 8 terror plots in the past year. Between April 2015 and this March, 325 people were arrested and 48 people convicted on terrorism charges. Many more await trial. The force encourages anyone worried a family or a friend may be drawn toward extremism to call its confidential anti-terror hotline. Around 60 to 70 people every month have been drawn back from the pathway to radicalization, 10% from tip-offs, according to a Met spokesman. But critics say this approach has sown a deep mistrust of police, especially among members of Muslim communities. Former Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent Dekali Durbabu told the BBC last year that the strategy had become a toxic brand. And East London's Waltham Forest Council of Mosques said the policy was used to spy and denigrate the Muslim community and cause mistrust. These misgivings prompted the U.K.'s terror watchdog to call for a review of the strategy. Hogan Howe says that while the strategy has its faults, I'm not sure I've seen the better system around the world. Nevertheless, there appears to be little chance authorities in Britain will ditch their current methods and arm every officer like in the US. I think there'd be a lot of police officers that might consider leaving the service or wouldn't have wanted to join had carrying a firearm been part of our routine work, Beattie said. There's no gun envy, he added.